As I mentioned previously, I want to try and use my channel to journal what I'm learning through my 20s. I feel like there isn't much content of real people on YouTube just documenting and sharing their experiences, just living a normal life. A lot of it, at least on my algorithm, seems to be a lot of TV series like shows, and they all have these massive budgets. Today, I want to discuss how I grew my net worth to just under £100,000 in the UK. I'm 23 right now and I turned 24 in February, and my goal is to have half a million net worth by the time I reach my 30s. If I'm honest, I have no idea if this is a conservative ambition or wildly unachievable. I think if I can keep up with what I'm about to share with you and continue to use a couple of growth strategies, then I don't see why it wouldn't be achievable, and maybe one day make it to that elusive 1 million net worth mark. So like I said, I'm from the UK, but please don't click off this video thinking anything I say will be invaluable if you're not also from the UK. Growing your net worth is a lot around mindset, good habits and best practices, which apply no matter what country you're from. And when I talk a little bit about specific accounts that have my money in, I believe most countries will have some kind of equivalent that should at least get the ball rolling for you in terms of where to look and things to consider. I said this in my last video, but I do just work your basic 9 to 5, not a dead end job or anything. It's in the aerospace industry, so there is a lot of room for vertical and horizontal development in my career. I used to think 9 to 5s were all about going paycheck to paycheck and using all the money you earn. And I will only touch on this briefly because I want to make a whole other video about this, but 9 to 5s can actually be a great step to freedom if used correctly and in the right circumstances. Anyway, just a quick disclaimer. This isn't financial advice. I'm just trying to recall the path that I used to get to this point and maybe open your eyes to things that you might not be considering. I definitely had some help on the way to reaching this 100k, and I'm not here to complain that I did it from the slums like people say or whatever. So when I was 13, I remember being really excited because I managed to save my way up to £1,000. I'm heavily into video games and have never really been a big spender. So I hit this point quite young, as saving money just comes naturally to me, even when I wasn't trying. I remember getting a couple consoles for my birthday or Christmas, along with some spending money, and the only thing I would really do with that is ask my mum to pre-order the new Call of Duty that would come out at the end of the year. So I just kept pooling this money I would get and helping my parents and family members out to get some pocket money to save. This carried on up until I was 15, and I got my first job as a waiter, earning £4 an hour. I would work the whole of Saturdays and Sundays just to walk away with like £30 or something like that. But I was just trying to grind it out and just say that I had some skills for my CV or at least some experience. I hated being a waiter so much because people would just moan at me all the time and the tips weren't even that good. I then managed to get a job at a pet store in my town, and this was when I was 16, so I got both a bump in my wages as I was older, and then also I think they offered me 50p above the minimum wage or something like that. So this took me to like around £7.20 an hour or in that region, and I just grinded it out, used it to build my CV and really work on my communication skills. I stayed at the pet shop until I was 21, and in these 3 years I still continued to save, but there were a couple of key things that helped me. I passed my driving test when I was 17, and my grandparents were kind enough to help me pay for the Vauxhall Corsa that I got, which I think was like £2,500 at the time. I applied to go to uni and got the basic rate student finance. For those that aren't familiar with UK university, student finance is the loan that the government gives university students to support them paying for things like rent or food while they're at university. So my basic rate loan was just over 3k per year, and I continued to live at home and commute into uni, so I saved this loan in its entirety every year. A student loan is slightly different to your classic loan. All the debt is wiped once you're over 40. Your payments are based on how much you earn, and these payments back to the loan are taken before tax and national insurance. Right now, for example, I earn 30k a year, but I only pay back, I think, around 15 or £20 a month on my student loan. So the ability to move this money into a high yielding account for the future is very worth it when the payback terms are so favourable. I carried on working at the pet shop through COVID as I was classed as a key worker, and this allowed me to save more money before I quit that job for something else. But before I get into what I moved on to next, I'll just do a summary of what I've said so far. So at 13, I saved £1,000. Working from 15 to 21 part-time while saving money I got for birthdays and Christmas allowed me to save up somewhere between £7,500 and £10,000. This isn't including my student loan because I'll break down how I really used my time at uni to propel me further. I decided to do a year-long internship at the aerospace company I currently work at during my degree. My salary for that year was £24,000, so I got £19,000 after tax. I managed to save £17,000 of that, as throughout all of what I'm about to tell you, I've been living at home, which has really been the biggest help allowing me to grow my cash. Now if you combine that £17,000 with my student loan from uni and my savings before it, I had accumulated £39,000 saved. At the time, I thought the internship slightly underpaid me, but I know it was a bit of a gamble with the company hiring me because I had no real experience, and I used that position to get back into the company on the graduate role that I'm now doing today. Before I get into how I split my money over this time to get it to work the most for me, there was a trend that I really managed to capture during my time at uni. I'm sure everyone remembers the insane COVID-19 crypto bull run. I imagine that's like how the gold rush prospectors felt in America when everyone was rushing to the West Coast in search for gold. It really did feel like if you were just around the market or had an idea of what was going on, then anyone could make money. One of my friends introduced me to NFTs and how being a part of the pre-sales would allow you to get a discount on NFTs ahead of the public sale. So I spent a couple of weeks researching and watching how different projects were playing out before I decided to put £400 into Ethereum. And this was right around when it was at its all-time peak of £3,600. I spent weeks and weeks promoting various NFT projects to get a part of their communities and qualify for the pre-sales. I then would buy the projects at the pre-sale prices before flipping them in the public sale at a higher price. It was an absolute insane time in my life. I remember going to uni on the train one morning and flipping a single NFT for £1,200. After this rush had settled down and I feel like everyone's forgot about NFTs now, within 6 months I'd turned my £400 investment into 16k. So that's a 40x return on investment. I pulled out 15k worth of Ethereum and left 1.5k in my wallet, which is, I think now it's worth like £900 or something. But to be honest, I'm just going to leave that in there in case one day it goes to the moon, like Diamond Hands or something. So talking through to this point, I'd accumulated 55k of, like cash and crypto. But what I haven't mentioned is how I was splitting it up to try and get it to work for me in the best possible way. So here's the breakdown of what you need to know as a young person trying to grow their wealth. It's all about ISAs, investment accounts, and pensions. These are slow and boring, but the easiest ways to grow your wealth. So as most people do, I used to keep all my cash in the bank savings, earning a measly % or 2 a month on interest. Then the UK government announced a lifetime ISA. This was aimed at helping young people being able to get on the property ladder, and up to an investment of £4,000 per year, they will actually match your investment by 25%. So for every 4k you put in, you can get an extra 1k on top of that investment and your interest on top of that. I looked around at various providers, and at the time, a company called Moneybox had the best interest rates. So I started pumping 4k a year into this account since I was 18. I also saw that they offered a stocks and shares ISA, so after reaching the cap of 4k a year on the lifetime ISA, I carried on pumping my savings into the stocks and shares ISA. I opted to go for the most high-risk investment profile, even though some years my investment would dwindle. Looking at the data over the past 10 years, it indicated an average ROI of 8%, and some years even went as high as 15%. Putting my money away in those two accounts alone has netted me a bonus 15k of earnings through interest and bonus schemes as of today. And this is actually in fact even higher because I pulled out a lot of the earnings to move into a private pension, but I'll cover that in a moment. So adding up the interest from these accounts, this takes my total net worth to 70k. And just to quickly touch on a stocks and shares ISA, this is an account where you can put money into it and then a company or a firm will invest that money how they see fit to try and get the most cash back for you. So it's really a lot more strategic than just using the bank to grow your money. As I mentioned at the start of the video, I've been in my full-time job for 2 years now, and this has really allowed me to aggressively save with more security around the consistent income. When I first started this job, I was able to tuck away 1.5k a month into an even higher yielding stocks and shares ISA and investment account. I also opened a private pension, and this is what has taken my net worth up to the 100k mark from the gap of 70. I would just say, though, to be careful how much you throw into a pension in a large chunk, because inevitably you're going to have quite a few big purchases or ongoing costs in your 20s if you choose to buy a house or have kids. And at certain points, you may need to pull some cash out depending on your circumstances. I think most of the population has no idea what their cash flow looks like, and they kind of just have this hope everything works out mentality. I still go out on the weekends or weekdays to whatever plans or events my friends and family want to do. I don't feel like I am, not living my 20s because of the saving that I do. And I feel like this is quite a big misconception for people who save their money. There's an image that they're just hermiting at home and not really seeing the outside world because they're putting all their money away. And this isn't to say that if you didn't start saving when you were younger, you're just cooked. And I'm not also here to say the boomer take of, well, if you didn't buy your coffee every day, then you'd have a mansion by now. But you really do need a grip and an understanding on your monthly incomings and outgoings. Those, £5 lunches, £10 trips to the shops, or £30 worth of subscriptions could be what's stopping you from investing even £100 a month. The key to investing is time, and compound interest is your greatest tool. I guarantee it will be much easier to set aside £200 at the start of your 20s than it will be to find £500 or £600 in your 30s to put away. If you Google how most millionaires are made, it's through long-term, consistent investing, which isn't hard or particularly difficult. I think a lot of people assume the 1 million mark is unattainable, and the people who do get it have this crazy invention or product that got them there overnight. But really, you can do it too. Even if you Google which occupation has the most millionaires, the Google overview will tell you that it's engineers, teachers, accountants, managers, people in the finance sector. These are all roles that can be achievable to most of you watching this video. Now that's all I have for this video today, and I know looking back on my journey you could argue that I was relatively lucky with the crypto investment, but still, that's only a small portion of what I've managed to build so far, and the rest was all done through very boring traditional investments that just take a bit of time. To take some ownership of your cash flow, maybe make a little promise to your future self that you're going to try and put them in a better position than where they're currently heading. If you have any questions, please put them below and I'll try to answer. Subscribe and like the video if you like this type of content. And that's all I have for today, so thank you for listening.